Good morning, everybody. It's a real pleasure to be here with you. I'm going to try and just set the scene from a global, a UK and an industry perspective, which is quite a lot to do in the next 3 hours or so that I've been given. We'll get you back. I'd like to thank Bill Law and Volvo for putting this event on together with the Construction Climate Challenge. It's really good to have an event like this to help us all, I think, understand the whole agenda better. So what's my role? Well, you've heard the sorts of things that I get involved with. So my day job is about delivering a sustainable business for Skanska. And that's sustainable in all regards. It's about delivering for the shareholders, delivering for our clients, but also delivering on our values, one of which is green. And our purpose, the sort of guiding purpose that we have for the business is we build for a better society. And the whole society piece, for me, includes, and for us in Skanska, includes the whole thing about sustainability, but it also includes the bit about engaging with society, and the two very much go hand in hand. And then my involvement with Green Construction Board and the Leadership Council for the Industrial Strategy is about my passion for change in our industry. I love change. I'm probably quite unique in that regard, but I'm absolutely passionate about trying to do something better, transforming this industry. So I want to start with the wider context. And globally, we all know that temperatures are rising. We all know that we're experiencing an increasing frequency of freak weather events, all linked to climate change. Now, monitoring has shown that we've already reached 400 parts per million CO2 concentration, and we're rapidly on our way to 450 parts per million. And 450 apparently links to the 2 degrees rise in temperature that we're all very worried about. Now, at the Paris Agreement of a year ago, which of course was ratified just last Friday, we've now gone on to have something like 90 signatories. So I think that demonstrates that politically this is growing up the agenda. And of course, I guess we all feel it needs to. From a UK perspective, we've recently had the 5th carbon budget from the Committee on Climate Change. And I wonder in the room, how many of you remember the Stern report, the Nicholas Stern report of a decade ago, when he looked at, so he was number 2 in the Treasury, and he looked at the impact of climate change on the economy. Show of hands? Yeah, some. Well, just last week, there was a piece in The Observer, actually on Sunday, where they interviewed him 10 years on. Did anyone see that piece? Yeah, 1 or 2. I'm going to read a couple of bits from it because I think it's very relevant to today. I mean, he says overall that he revealed the dangers of global warming on the economy, and he says that today it's worse than he had feared. That's a bit worrying. In his piece, he was quick to recognise the sort of definitive account of the economic dangers posed to the planet by global warming. And he says that whilst the picture is certainly grim, the world's top climate economist still believes that there are grounds for modest optimism. He says that with hindsight, I now realise that I underestimated the risks. I should have been much stronger in what I said in the report about the costs of inaction. I underplayed the dangers. He says about the Paris climate and the subsequent rapid ratification of over 90 countries, that's provided with him, and therefore us, with a sense of hope. In his review, he made a very cogent case for the need to make drastic reductions in the burning of fossil fuels And that, of course, is an area that hasn't happened yet. And the consequences of burning fossil fuels, of course, is not just the carbon, it's also the pollution. And it's reckoned that in the UK today, there are something like 30,000 people a year that are killed through pollution. In China, would you believe, it's 4,000 people a day. Staggering numbers. As a counterbalance, Stern points to the encouraging increase in the use of sustainable technologies and the fact that that should help us wean ourselves off fossil fuels. Now, Bill's already alluded to the opportunities in infrastructure, and Stern picks this up. He says that in the next 20 years, as economies across the globe expand, the planet is likely to build infrastructure that will more than double what exists today. That's a staggering number. And he goes on to say quite correctly that the crucial issue here for all of us is that we build that in a sustainable way. We have to do something different and lead the way. There's a big opportunity there. Stern says that he's confident that government understands the importance of adhering to, this is UK government now, the 80% challenge that we have on 2050 greenhouse gas levels. And he's optimistic that the new administration will embrace it. Finally, he says that we have a lot to do to limit carbon emissions to an effective level. But he goes on to say that he's confident that it's possible to achieve that, but he cannot say that he's confident that it will happen. It's quite an interesting piece. That was in the Observer at the weekend. Certainly I remember 10 years ago reading that report, and for me it was a real key moment in my learning and my change in action. Now, Chris and I work together on the Green Construction Board, and we're engaged with government. And we now have a new department with the new administration, which they still can't seem to work out whether they call it bays or bees. And there was people in the room, including one of the ministers last week, where there was still that confusion reigning. But I think the important thing is that that department now brings together business, it brings together environment from the old DEC organisation, as well as industrial strategy. And I think industrial strategy, with government already saying that actually here's a big opportunity to link green and sustainable construction, is a big opportunity for us. So turning to the industrial strategy, Construction 2025 for us in construction. That is a partnership, came about as a partnership between government and industry. I've been involved right the way through the development of the strategy, and now through the Leadership Council, the rollout of the delivery, the implementation phase. Now, we have some very bold targets, and they were deliberately set to be bold. There's no point just having little incremental improvements. What we were trying to do was set bold targets that really transform the way that we work in order to improve our industry. So the 33% reduction in cost, the 50% reduction in time, and the 50% reduction in greenhouse gases. They were deliberately set to be bold, to force us to do something different. And I know there's a lot of people, even within my own organisation, that say, Mike, this is crazy. How are we going to possibly achieve these? Well, Chris Newsom follows me straight afterwards, and he will talk about an example within Anglian Water, where we're going a long way towards these targets today, never mind 2025. Going forwards, we've got an event on the 23rd of November, and what we're doing is trying to, this is with CEOs and chairmen from across the industry, and we're trying to brief them on where we're going, and we're trying to get greater buy-in to create greater momentum and traction going forwards. We're focusing on digital, manufacturing, and whole life cost performance. And we're doing it through a number of work streams, one of which includes the Green Construction Board. Now, the Green Construction Board itself has been going, I think it's about 5 years now. Chris, you and I have been involved since day one. It links to, so we now fall underneath the construction leadership group through industrial strategy as one of these work streams. And I think it's good to have it all joined up together. There are a number of things that we focused on over the 5 years, and there just isn't time to cover it all. There are reports which hopefully you've seen. One of the first things we did was look at the route map together with Arup. And what that shows is that we are making progress against the 50% reduction by 2025 and the 80% reduction by 2050. But, not surprisingly, when we reran it about a year, 18 months ago, we found that with the upturn in the economy, so there was a decrease in the rate of change with reduction of greenhouse gases. So it shows we've still got a lot to do. And by the way, what that route map showed is that it's only by doing everything possible that we can imagine today that you get anywhere close to these targets in 2050. So there's a lot to be done. So that was, if you like, the best case. In buildings, we've looked at things like the performance gap, which is still a big issue and something that we're trying to take forward. That's the performance gap between the designed energy efficiency of a building versus the in-use efficiency of a building. Skills and training is a big issue, and right now we're working on a training guide to help spell out what training we think people should go at or go through at all levels in the industry. We're doing some work on the circular economy. We're working right now on top 20 tips to help people that perhaps don't understand what the circular economy is all about. And that will lead to another conference, probably in February of next year. And then on the infrastructure side, we have the working group chaired by Chris. It's a very active group and has been since day one, which is excellent. And it's really the infrastructure carbon review that we wrote, adopted by Treasury as the number 2, the sister report to the cost review. And it's always good when government really get behind something like this. One of the sort of mantras that came out of this was the recognition that actually in the infrastructure space, by focusing on low carbon, you get the added benefit of lowering cost. And that's probably one of the reasons why Treasury liked it so much. We've gone on to produce PAS 2080. Chris will tell us all about that in a moment. And right now we're working on an e-learning module to help people improve their understandings. Returning to today's seminar then, I'd like everyone to think about how in the infrastructure sector, how in your companies, how as you as individuals will respond to the challenge that we all face about reducing carbon in infrastructure. I think we've made good progress understanding the size of the carbon challenge. And I also think we've made good progress in developing tools and techniques to help us understand at a project, a program, and a sort of wider industry perspective, how to go about identifying where the carbon is. There's a session on that that follows this session. And tools and techniques that help us then monitor what we've got and come up with actions to reduce it. You know, things like, well, the things I've just mentioned, the infrastructure carbon review, PAS 2080, carbon footprinting, whole life cost approach, which is developing legs in certain sectors, certainly within the utility sector, but needs to grow much greater legs because we have to look at this on a whole life cost basis, not just the capital carbon at the time of construction, but also the operational carbon, which has usually in infrastructure space has a very long tail to it. But all of this requires leadership, it requires early engagement, Because if you don't start out trying to tackle carbon, you can't bolt it in sort of later on. And it requires collaboration. It requires collaboration at the project level, the program level, and at industry level. And that's one of the things we're trying to work at within the Leadership Council, is to try and get greater collaboration across businesses and in clusters. So for me, it's not just about who takes the lead. I think everybody has a leadership role to play to make it really happen. But it's also about the culture you create, because I think there's a cultural piece to this, and absolutely we think that within Skanska. There are some good examples that have come out of the Infrastructure Carbon Review, and maybe some of you in this room have contributed to those, so thank you for that. You can find them in the 1 year on and the 2 year on reports that we've produced. And I know that we're going to share some more examples today. So my final challenge is this. Are you, in your organisations and as individuals, doing enough to systematically target and reduce carbon? I'm not putting you on the spot right now. You can think about that yourselves, and actually maybe Paul will come back to that at the end of today. At EcoBuild earlier this year, I said, and I still hold this view, that I don't think, whilst there are some leading lights and there are some pockets of good practice, it's by no means enough. There are not enough organisations doing so. But I hope that today will help you in your journey, wherever you are in that journey, to do a little bit more, or maybe a lot more, when you get back. Because I believe, as you've heard already, that actually we face a bright future in infrastructure here in the UK and globally, actually. But what I think we need to do, and it's incumbent on all of us, is to make it a bright and low carbon future. Thanks very much.